Hello and welcome to another edition of the Low Code Cafe. This is episode number 96 for June 15, 2022. Today we're going to discuss the new features that are in our next version, 121, and talk a little bit about when that version is going to come out. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Dale Warner. I'm head of support for Plant and App. This is an event that we hold for the community every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. This is an opportunity for us to, it's really a technical event, one that we try to address technical topics about what's coming out in our versions, what technical issues you might want to face, and the largest part of it is typically devoted to building something. Today, we're not going to build something. We're going to talk about the tools that you'll have to build with going forward. All of these episodes are recorded and are posted to our YouTube channel. So we invite you to take a look at that, youtube.com/plantandapp. And you can use the QR code or that URL to get to it. We'll post that again in a minute as well. Our agenda today, it's mostly Dale Warner. We're going to talk about roadmap upgrade, a little bit of from the trenches to where we talk about things that are happening from a support standpoint, and then our largest segment where we do low code development or talk about technical topics. So briefly, roadmap updates. We had previously announced that today was the start of our beta test for version 1.21. In a meeting just a little while ago, we decided to hold that briefly, but we don't know whether it's just going to be a day or two. So that announcement is forthcoming. Again, the larger things that are involved with this is the ability to import and export entities, which is part of a bigger deployment between multiple environments story. So that is one of the big features, and we'll be demonstrating that today, and also enhancing the hotfixes experience. So all that we'll discuss in more detail as we talk about exactly what those features are. In our From the Trenches segment, I really just have information about new hotfixes that are available in case any of these issues are bothering you. As we've discussed previously, when you roll up to a higher version, 1.21, when we release that, you'll get all of our previously released hotfixes. There were a lot of them in this release so far, now 38 total. Just by way of reference, we made changes to from Bootstrap 3 to Bootstrap 5, causing us to touch a lot of areas in the software. So there were a lot of little nagging problems that needed to be fixed. There still are some yet to come in that conversion, but we've released a lot of fixes for those. So today we will have, if you go to the updates section, configuration updates, and look under the hotfixes, you'll find some of the things that we fixed. Those include, there was a problem with the ability to embed a form into a static text box. It wasn't being displayed, so that if you're trying to do that, that's been fixed now with this hotfix. But that same hotfix, it doesn't mention it, but it fixes a problem we had with the star rating. If you were using the star rating and Bootstrap 3, that it was returning a value of 0 regardless of what star rating the user was choosing. So that issue was fixed as well with that update. And then we added some enhancements, and we'll touch on some of these as well in the hands-on portion. One is the ability, there's localization now for touch signature. So the touch signature has the ability to clear the signature out, but it had the English words clear signature under it. Now, if you want to do that in another language, if you have multiple languages enabled, you're able to clear that out. When there's a conflict in Bootstrap versions, we've added better wording so that it's understandable about what's going on when you have both Bootstrap 3, Bootstrap 5 on a page. So that's a minor enhancement. And then let's see, I put the same thing twice here. There's a different one that I didn't get, but hopefully I'll catch it in my next segment. But there are those are listed out on the hotfixes section of the site. And then I'll mention that we do another meeting, the low-code campfire. That's the same hour on Fridays, and that's in a meeting format, so you get a chance to discuss and ask questions and present issues that you're dealing with. We invite you to join us for that. It's a good time from, I guess, a geek perspective. And then for this episode, links for this episode, and let me go ahead and put those on our chat right now. In case anybody needs to either access our community, register in advance for the campfire, get a hold of our webinar recordings, or give us feedback. We love feedback. Okay, so next, hands-on low coding, and here's the things that we're going to talk about today. I'm going to demonstrate a lot of the new features. So those will include our entity export and import. We've got some new actions and some new changes. So let's just work through these one by one. Let's get started on that. And those are here are demonstrations. So the biggest one is the ability to export and import entities. And I've got a setup here, and hopefully I can make it clear, because we're going to be bouncing back and forth between a configured system that has entities that I've defined, and also our empty system where there isn't anything in it yet at all, and so no entities. And so we'll be exporting from one and into the other. We can do that in a couple of different ways, but let's just try it out and see how it looks. So this, from a user interface standpoint, this looks very much like what we've done in the past. You have the ability on when you're looking at an entity, much like we did in workflows and elsewhere, where you can export. So you've got an export button that outputs JSON that has all the configuration about what's behind that entity. You can either copy it and paste it, or save it as a file. So I'm going to start just with the copy and paste and show you a little bit about what will happen when we try and bring this in. So the import entity, when you click on it in a system, you can paste the JSON from the other system and import. And there's a lot of testing that goes on behind the scenes, validation that goes on to make sure that things are, that entity is ready to import. So in this case, and I've picked one intentionally that has a lot of issues going on, but there is the customer type entity isn't defined yet, so it couldn't find that property, so it didn't know what to do with it. I also have other entities called rep and another one called products purchased. None of those could be found, so those all threw validation errors, and nothing is going to happen then. And also this referred to the CSR's role, a role that was defined in the source system but not in the target system. So I just want to, we'll go ahead and take a look at that and work through those issues one at a time. So if we go to the roles on the export, we'll see that I defined a custom role that was referenced in that entity. So I am going to create the exact same one, and it's advised that you create it exactly the same, keep your systems even. So I'm going to create a CSR, and I say that meaning case CSRs. I happen to do that with some different case. So I'm going to do it exactly the same. So we'll just go into roles here and create this new role. See, it doesn't exist yet. So we have our customer support reps and CSRs. This is the Windows clipboard I'm using. If you haven't used it before, it's Windows V. It's a great tool. So lets you copy and paste multiple things. So now we have the roles CSRs. And if we were to go back to our entities and try to import again, we'll pick our import that I just did a minute ago. And so now you see the errors related to the role are no longer throwing validation errors. It's just that we're missing these other things that it can't do. So that's the validation kind of things that you're going to get into, but let's actually get things exported and imported and make it work. So I've got in our source system, I'm going to do these by file now. You've seen it copy and paste, but we'll do by file. So I'm going to export all these different things. In this version, in this step, this is a step towards, as I said, our whole multiple environment deployment initiative, where you can go from a development system to a staging system to another system if necessary, to a production system. And the idea is that content will automatically, through use of a Git repository, be able to be pushed from one system to the other, and all of our content will go. We had a lot of our content was already has the ability to export and import and go to the Git repository, but entities was not part of that. So this is kind of the first marker in going down that road of being able to do this automatically. We're doing it manually, and doing it manually, we need to know what order to do things in, that the referenced things have to be brought in before the things that reference it. So we'll be applying that intelligence to it for ourselves here as we do the import. But I'm going to export all these things, and I'm going to send them to a file. So we'll hit the export button on customer and save as file. It doesn't need it. It's saying it's downloaded the entity customer JSON. It's automatically named, so we don't need to do anything with that. But we're also going to do customer type and save that as a file. Another one is product type, so we will export that. And the last one is rep. Those are the 4 elements that we're going to bring from one system to the other. So now we go to our system where we need to do the import, and now we'll start getting successful imports. So we will click import entity, and instead of pasting here, I'm going to use choose file. And I'm just going to start with rep. The last one I'm going to want to do is customer, because customer refers to all of these things. So we'll do rep and open, and note that the file is listed here, and this message just warning you can't do both a file and a import. So you pick one or the other, either a file or a copy and paste. But we're picking a file. We'll say import and let it process. We now have, since we've imported our first entity, we have our other system entities are also now visible. So document, image, role, and user are all visible here. But rep is the one that we just created. And so if we take a look at it by editing, we can see that it has properties like name, experience, and rank. We could go back and compare this from our targets, from our source system, but all the options that were here were carried forward, and also any permissions. This one doesn't happen to oh, yep, it does reference CSRs. CSRs have no ability to see or create reps. So this custom, all the properties, including menu and whether or not there's an icon for it, all those are built in to the are imported into the target system. So I'm not even going to save here. When it imported, it automatically built the auto-generated create, read, update, delete, the CRUD that we automatically create when you were to manually create an entity. So we can go to that page. It's the reps page, and now we have functionality on our system that will allow us to create some reps. So 5 years of experience, and my rank is 9. And we'll add another one here. So we have a couple of, so we automatically get our functionality. We can add, edit, delete, and I'm not going to delete any here, but all that functionality was automatically transferred or built, rather built, it was built from the entity. So let's go to our entities again on our importing system, and we will continue to import the other elements. So we will import our product type, and our customer type, and finally the customer that we were trying to do originally. And because all the supporting elements are now there, we don't get any errors. So we have all of our things. So now if we were to go to the front end and take a look, we have customers, for example, now, and these other elements. I'm going to provide some data doesn't transfer. It's only transporting the definition of the entity. So if you have data that needs to go, that's on you to happen. And so when we go, for example, to customer type as a the page that got created for that automatically, no data will add this. So we'll have large customers with rank of 9, and we'll have small customers with the rank of 1. So we've got some data there. Product type is the things that this fictional company sells. So we'll add some product types. They can sell books, magazines, tapes. So those are our 3 products that we sell. And so we already defined some reps. So now we're ready to enter some customers. So we can go into customers, and all these will now turn on. So one of our customers is Warner. We have cell phones and home phones. These weren't required, but they could be entered. And our customer types now are automatically referencing. So we have large and small. This is a small customer, and I'm the rep for that. And if we wanted to enter the products that this client purchased, we could go to the products and add some existing products from our list. So books and magazines. So all the functionality that we've been demonstrating over this last year that is automatically the no-code portion of what Plantain App does for you. That all transfers automatically when you do a export and import. So now getting into a little bit of the fun that goes with this, if you like this kind of thing. If you were to go to your source system and edit, you have the ability to make changes and, for example, add properties. So we will add a property here. Let's say that we wanted to do the address. And we'll just make this be a text field and make it searchable, filterable, sortable. We don't need filterable for this, but it is sortable. So searchable, sortable, and we can save this. We could add as many properties as we need. And I didn't try this, but I'm going to rearrange it. This sounds like fun. We'll move it up here. Didn't try this in my testing, but we'll see how it works. So we'll save this and override. So on our source system, we're now going to have address. Now, for those of you who are using Plantain App for the first time and haven't seen this before, this is This is a reconciliation page and typically doesn't require any attention from you. So I'm just going to click away from it. But now when on our source system, I'm going to take a look and note that I have a record on this source system, and I can edit and put in an address. And so that's there. If we look at our target system, the import system, where we haven't imported it yet, and take a look at it, we don't have an address field. So we're now going to use the export capability to export the new definition of customer, and we'll just use the copy and paste version here and import it on our import system up here and import it. So the system is automatically doing a reconciliation, keeping the same things between systems. So the fields that were there before will continue to be there, but now when we refresh this page, we're going to have an address. It did turn up in the correct place. And so address for this client. And so automatically transfers that. I'm going to do one more just because I'm going to be brave today. You can also change the name of properties. So if address is here and we really want to call this full address to differentiate it, and save, override, and we'll import that as well. The point is it's going to transfer the name change as well. So we've got our customer entity, we will export it, go to our target system and import it, and we'll see that that property name changed. And this time I'm going to just take a look at it in the properties edit. And so you can see it changed to full address. And I didn't show you earlier, but it copied the sortable, searchable choices that we made. And if we refresh the CRUD screen that was created for us, we have it's now full address. So field changes as well as additions are supported. In my testing yesterday, I found that deleting fields is not handled very well yet. So I advise you to, it's definitely good for adding or moving fields, adding fields or changing field names. Deletion, I'd caution you to try it first or to not delete the field. We might have to do that external to the export-import process. So I am almost going to move on, but if anyone has any questions about exporting and importing, now would be a great time. What I wanted to mention is that the capability to do this is to my knowledge, starts with systems that in version 1.17, we introduced GUIDs, unique IDs in all of our definitions of entities and the things that they relate to. Systems that started before 1.17 don't have these GUIDs yet, and we are working on a migration for those, and that is targeted for our next release 1.22. So if your system, unfortunately, if your system started before we introduced GUIDs, that you won't be able to take advantage of entity import and export until we get the migration done. But if your system initiated with us after 1.17, then you will. Okay. So that is export and import of entities. I see no questions on that, but hopefully there'll be some discussion on that in our Campfire on Friday as well. I think this is a very important and good feature that we've added. And again, it's a stepping stone to where we're going with being able to fully support moving content between systems, also multiple environments, but also leading towards being able to do sell solutions in a store. So anyway, next, flow and weight. This is a flow weight. This is a new feature that was added. I will demonstrate it here. And you can see it in any number of ways, but I'll just do a quick workflow. And this is essentially, if you've programmed it all before, this is a sleep. So, or just a delay, depending on what your language used to call it. But we could add a action. This is from the list of flow actions called wait. And it accepts a duration. So it's just going to add a delay. Question came up. Jim asked if on pre-117 systems will entities created after 117 be exportable? And in the current, the definition of a system, I mean, the short answer is no, not until you get the migration script that we're going to be working on, that those pre-systems don't, even though you've created an entity after in a later, at a later time, say created in 1.20, the system definition doesn't have GUIDs, so they're not going to be exportable. Once the migration is provided, then yes, that they will all be exportable and everybody will be on the same playing field. Sorry for having to give that answer, but that's what we have, Jim. Okay, thanks for asking. So back to the demo here. You can have a hard-coded, or I'm going to add a, do this as an input token. So we'll put the duration in, and so we'll create a duration parameter. Required, and so when we save and test, this is going to be the demo. And the duration of this then we'll say 2000 and run. So this is in milliseconds. That's going to be 2 seconds. And so it's going to run, and you can see it's successfully completed in 2 seconds. If we run it again, give it a different value, it completes in 1 second. So that's our, that is the weight. This can be useful in a number of areas. It can be cosmetic if you want to let something stay on the screen a minute before you move on. It can be functional. So for example, you might want to, if you're making server requests to something that throttles you, you could get data from an API and then wait 5 seconds in order to not overflow the throttling that server applies. So you can add delays in for very functional reasons, but whether it's functional or cosmetic, that's just flow wait, very easy to do, can be in the back end and the front end, you need to use it. So that's flow wait. The touch signature, we talked a little bit about this one, this localization. I have a demo here for this. So our touch signature, which is available as an add-on, you can click and add it on, it gives the ability to add a nice signature or a bad signature, but down at the bottom it says clear signature, and this is the function for clear signature. So for our non-English speaking friends, this was annoying. People go to a site and it says clear signature and they couldn't get it to show in different language. So this system that I'm working on here has localization turned on and has, for example, another language. And so when you click the other language, you get a different translation of that. And so when we have it, if you want to clear the signature instead of submitting it, it still works exactly the same way. And a third language activated here, and again, a different translation. If you haven't used, well, I'll just point out where localization takes place, and I've made a note of it here in mine because you have to know where to create the localization file in order to take advantage of this. And let's see, I am not signed in, so I need to get signed in so I can do this. But localization happens under the site settings, languages, and you can pick a language. I'm going to pick this Dutch and do the translation icon. And now you have to pick the resource file. This is the one where you got to know where it is. And so in this case, it's local resources, desktop modules, MVC, DNN sharp, action form. And if you lose this, by the way, support can help you find it, right? But local resources, and we're going to look at form resources. So when we click form resources, we get all the different things that can be localized on the form. And if we go to touch signature, clear signature, we can see that there is a setting here, and you can change that and save it. This is a little bit cantankerous in a couple of different ways, but one of them is that after you make a change, you'll need to go and do clear cache, at least in the current version of DNN, so that that translation takes effect, and then you'll be able to see your change. So for those that are doing localization and international sites, that's a small but useful enhancement. Another enhancement we have is that Workflow Designer no longer allows the creation of workflows with duplicate names. So if we were to go in, and I have one here called Wait Demo, and I go back and create a new workflow, and we'll just do a basic one here, a minimal workflow, but we'll say that we want to save it and call it Wait Demo. It does a check on the name. It says it already exists and won't let you save it. So it made our system previously allowed the creation of workflows with the same name, and while it supported it and did it well, it doesn't really make any sense. So we're now preventing it. Also in workflows, if you have something, and I think this is on my list a little bit farther down, but if you are duplicating a workflow, previously it would just create a copy of it on the list, and depending on how many workflows that you had, you might not see it in the list or see that it even created. So we've changed our flow a little bit. When you duplicate something, it creates it immediately and drops you into the editor with the name. So it's very clear that you are working on a new copy and that you can just rename it to whatever you need to. Yep, and so now we see it as the copy here. We'll delete it. But that's just a very simple but clarification of what was already happening, but now it's very clear. So that was when duplicating workflow, open to it immediately. Here's a good one, that listings, the ability to disable a header. So I'm going to go to this in a demo here. And so I have a listing, or that I've called users grid. Up at the top, we have this nice header that says it's the users grid. It has the search, the first name, the last name, all these things that are in here. But some of you don't use these features. And so what was happening was that you had this, as you removed features from the top, for example, as we turned off, if you go to this listing and turn off display title, save, if we removed all the things that were up here, we were still getting a box. And And so that didn't make any sense to have an empty box that was being forced on you. So now if you turn off these three things, the title, the search, and the filters, that the box becomes empty and it goes away. So it fully goes away, and that's useful. Not a hard one, and it really makes sense, but it's just kind of cleaning up some things that that we should have had originally. So if we go to, I'm going to turn these things back on, particularly filters. If you turn on anything, the box will reappear. But I'm turning back on filters just to show that another feature that was added. These, when you're filtering, these now always show in sorted order, alphabetical order. Previously, it was a little bit of hit and miss. And this new filtering capability is it's really quite handy that you can have multiple things selected that you can look at. You can clear a filter, but also if your list is long, you can also search for the ones that you're looking for. So using the search, so those things there, this multi-selection and the search were there previously, but now we're guaranteed to have them in sort order. So that's a nice, useful one. And the last one I'm going to demonstrate is the clear caption. So on our stars, if we were to take a look at the way that this form is implemented, we have the star rating, and there is now a parameter clear caption. And previously this was not done. It's the caption that gets shown when no selection is made. So if it's empty, it defaults to not rated. So it's encouraging you to click something. But if you can provide your own, and so if we do this and go to clear caption and call it so now it defaults to, you must select at least one star. Again, not rocket science, but very useful. And since we're here talking about it, in case you haven't seen the star rating before, I'll do some of these others. Notice that as we slide along, the stars rating changes, but there isn't anything that explains what that rating means. So I'm going to make a couple of changes to this just to demonstrate how that can work. So the star captions, and I'm going to number of stars. I'm going to change the step to 1 just so that it's easier to try and add these. So now notice that the steps, we don't get half steps anymore. You can do steps by 1. And so in the star rating, there are these other star captions. So we can say that 1 equals bad and 2 equals better. Superior. So now as we're sliding along on these, we get nothing. Did I not save that? What did I do? Ah, I got these backwards. Patrick, why didn't you stop me?
I didn't notice.
keep wanting to do it too. So these are, you don't have to provide names for them all, so I will avoid making you watch me do that again. But so now we have one bad, 5 out of sight, and so you get the idea. Okay. Now, having made that mistake, I'm going to take a look at the text and see what that says. So there's the name and the value. It shows it in the example here. I just wasn't paying attention, but you give a name to a value, and that's how that works, as my grandson says. Okay, so with that, that's the things that I wanted to demonstrate today, and then we have some things that I wanted to talk about today. There's a new option for you. I don't have a nice demonstration for it, but I can show you where it exists. So the open form pop-up and continue or stop execution has new options for how the pop-up closes. So if we were to go into, and I'm going to just, I'm not going to do it, but I will show you the action. So we'll edit one of my forms and we'll add a button. Doesn't matter, we're not going to save it. But if we look at the actions, we have our pop-up actions, and we'll go to open a form pop-up, and let's say we're going to do the stop execution. But down at the bottom, there's 3 new options that you have access to. Note that I'll default to checked because this is the behavior that we had before. So there is the ability to close the pop-up that includes an X. There'll be the pop-up that gets to be closed. Previously, if you clicked outside of a pop-up, the pop-up would also close. So which can be an annoying behavior. And then the escape key would allow it to close as well. So you've got a lot of different ways that the user can interactively close the thing. You can uncheck any or all of these, and now the user can't close the pop-up. It has to be done by actions. So all of these give you some choices, and so it kind of gets you closer to a true modal pop-up window. Pretty straightforward, but I just don't happen to have a demo of it to show you. Another one I wanted to talk about is some changes that are going on for our updates and hotfixes. So this would be if we look at our configuration page, go to updates, hotfixes. We don't have, this is one of the things that we're working on in bringing our current 1.21 release across the finish line. It's not there yet, so I'm not actually able to show it to you, but there's a couple of things to talk about where it's going, and it's going to be useful to you. When we release hotfixes, some of them are recommended or critical. Some of them are very non-critical, and you've seen a lot of these. If we'll release a hotfix, if you're not using it, it doesn't bother you, there's no reason to install it. But some things are recommended, some things are critical, and they will show as part of the information for a hotfix. And when there are recommended and critical hotfixes, we want to encourage you to take them, but we don't want to force you to take them. The reasoning, especially being that in an enterprise environment where you've done all the testing and you're happy with the way things are working, if we just automatically force you to take them, and we've done this unintentionally in past releases, we force you to take them, it forces you to move up without testing in a production environment. which is not acceptable. So we're going to be popping up when you go into the configuration screen. It's going to let you know that there are recommended and critical hotfixes that you should take a look at and consider installing. But it's not going to force you, and that I believe it's going to come up once per day. So if you were to go into configuration and there are hotfixes, you can snooze them and they won't bother you anymore for that day. You come in tomorrow. It's going to be a little bit of a nag / reminder that we really want you to get those, but you can put them off indefinitely, and it will not. It will only impact people who have access to the configuration screen, and not people who your end users who typically wouldn't have access to that. So won't bother anybody, but it will also try and keep you from forgetting about those. Let's see. And the other one in that same area was that when we show hotfixes, there's for those of you who are already using these, you'll know sometimes we'll make several changes to one area of the product. And so when that happens, you'll see each version and what was fixed showing in the display. But typically you'll want to install only the last hotfix, and you're going to get all of the other things. So in our hotfixes, that's going to be clearer now. You're going, instead of having to install it will point you towards installing the last hotfix, and I'll give you the details all of what you're going to get as a result of that. So that should be easier to navigate and to the way it is now. You might think that you need to install each hotfix sequentially, and there's a lot. It really will end up being a shortcut. And then the final one that I pulled out to talk about was that the old My Tokens user interface, which I don't know if I even have. No, this is this is my older system. So My Tokens, this is the very old interface that has access to the same tokens that are visible on. If we were to go to the back to the configuration page. It's the exact same. It's two different views looking at the same thing. We're removing the older one. So starting at version 1.21, you'll only have access to tokens in this way. All right. So now for my compatriots from Plant and App on the call, are there any that I missed talking about? We have about 12 minutes left in our hour. So if there's any of your favorites that I missed talking about, now would be a time to remind me. And it's a good time if anyone has any questions about what was announced today. Good. So with that, a lot of things that are changing. I hope you consider most of those to be enhancements and benefits in your environment. We just thank you for giving the feedback. A lot of these are based on the feedback that you give to us through feature requests and through your support tickets. And so we're making progress on those things. With that, I will then just thank you for attending today, and hope you'll come back to join us in Campfire in 2 days, or for another edition of the Low Code Cafe next week. Have a good week, everyone.